Hi! I thought I'd give a quick thought for this week's sedra. Yisro, the Torah reading we have this week, deals with primarily the events leading up to and the giving of the Torah, the sedra, the colloquially called Ten Commandments. And in a previous video, I've sort of given one explanation of the link as to why in the first of the Ten Commandments, God says in Hebrew, Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher asesi eschem mieretz Mitzrayim, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out from Egypt. And why the Torah and why God introduced the Exodus into the first of the Ten Commandments. And back in that video, we said that there was two levels of knowledge, two levels of a relationship with God. There is the experiential relationship that we had through the Exodus, and there's the perhaps more academic relationship that we have through learning Torah, and that in our lives those two need to come together. What though the way you look at that though, if you look at the dynamic of that explanation, we can see that perhaps that explains why the Exodus is linked to the Aseret Sedibros, to the first of the Ten Commandments, but it's difficult to see the other way round. In other words, we could probably have just had the Exodus as an experience, which we recreate every Pesach, every Passover, and we go through that. We have a festival dedicated to it for that very reason, to reinvigorate our emunah and our belief in God and the miracles that he did and continues to do for us. But do we really need the academic side of it? We could question whether the theoretical aspect of it is as helpful as the experiential side. So Rashi, in his comments on the first of on that section of the Aseret Sedibros, on the first of the Ten Commandments, he says that God took us out of Egypt to sort of stop the slavery that we had, or the enslavement we had to Pharaoh, and that there was a transition from the slavery to Pharaoh to the slavery to God. So there's clearly a forward way dynamic as well, or a backwards way dynamic, depending on which way around you look at it. There is a connection backwards from the Ten Commandments or to the Exodus from Egypt, and there's clear need for both. And I think this is summed up nicely in a piece of research done by an organisation called the Edelman Trust. I don't know if you've heard of them. Every year they do a survey, being an American organisation, they can do it on thousands of people, on what they consider to be trustworthy. And they call it the Trust Benchmarking Report. And they look at different organisations in the public sector, the private sector, and government, and so on. And the way they measure people's trust is to look at two different metrics, two different axes, if you like, on a graph. One is the ethical perception of an organisation being having an ethical backbone, having an ethical mandate. But the other is to look at the perceived ability of that organisation to be able to deliver on that ethical mandate. And I'll leave it to you to have a look at to look it up online and find out which organisations feel where and what different people's perceptions are of different government organisations and in the private sector as well. But we have those two elements come in very nicely to the situation we've just described. The ethical mandate clearly is the Aseret Sedibros, the Ten Commandments. But God needed the Exodus from Egypt and the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea as a way of showing that he had the ability to deliver on that mandate. And so come into a covenant with us that was a bipartisan covenant with us, in which he could show, as if to say, look, I can deliver on my part of the deal, I can deliver on my part of the covenant. What are you going to come back to deliver for you? And this is what the expectations God has of us. So that shows how both of those pieces of the puzzle, the Exodus from Egypt and the giving of the Torah, have a sort of two-way relationship between each other. I hope. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Shabbat Shalom.